everyone, you're back here with IPL Radio. Just Sarah's lost SD's lost got a bit crazy here. Got too many buttons to press. I'm too excited about the AFL season.
Yeah,
but I
you're
think
getting excited. Carlton are kicking some goals too. Tell you what, it's all happening at the MCG as well.
I'm just as excited about our guest. I think finally I've managed to get on the phone. Steve, are you there with us?
Look, I am with you. Look, what we've done is we've got a can over here in Queensland. We've got a bit of string. We've worked it over there to Rockingham, and bingo, here we are.
Fantastic. It does take a little while to get over to us. Bit of a wait a while.
Oh, not a problem. It's that time delay, but, it's all good. We've connected.
That's it. Steve, good to talk to you. For listeners, I'll try and keep it on level, but you are my brother-in-law. But, mate, you've had many, many years as a journalist, sport reporter, news reporter, news director of different coverages, and also you're a news reader again up there for Channel 7 Gold Coast. You'll be loving it up there.
Oh, mate, it's been glorious on the Goldie, mate. Of course, it's the paradise up here, 30 degrees every day, not a cloud in the sky. It's absolutely been glorious.
But you get
a bit of Perth weather.
You get a few storms and things up there. Come on, don't be too biased.
Oh, mate, the weather's been up and down for the past fortnight, I tell you. We've had storms, we've had wind, we've had blue sunshine, we've had 32 degrees one day, 27 the next.
Sounds like most of the country, doesn't it?
Look, Steve, you've had an amazing career in journalism. You love it. You love keeping on top of what's going on with the news. Thanks for being a part of IPL Radio's Talking Sport. I remember many years ago you had a Sports on Sunday program which you hosted, which was fantastic. We want to talk to you about a couple of things, and that is, obviously you live in Queensland, so what do you think about the Queensland football teams in the AFL at the moment?
Oh, mate, I think we're going well. So I was down at the Suns training the other day.
Right.
And, mate, they looked as fit as. They looked fantastic. It was a week before the first round. Obviously, the first round didn't go to plan whatsoever. But we're hoping this weekend they can sort of make amends for that. And as for the Lions, look, they've been looking fantastic in the pre-season.
Yeah.
Really, really well. And then, of course, they bombed out last week. But tomorrow night against the D's at the Gabba, I reckon the Lions are going to come back with a vengeance. And look, we're really looking forward to the big match tomorrow night. We'll be there with the family. We're going to go along and watch the Lions take on the D's. So it'll be a great night. Actually, a huge night in Brisbane tomorrow night, because we've got the first ever Battle of Brisbane, and that's where they're going to play that. They're going to play that funny game for us AFL state type people, where rugby league we're going to have the Brisbane Broncos versus the Dolphins.
Right.
Now this is the first. Of course, the Dolphins is the new team into the NRL this season. Won the first couple of matches, up on near the top of the ladder, going fabulously well. Fins up, as they say, up there in Dolphin land. And, look, it's going to be a cracker. 80,000 people. Now, look, I think the AFL is going to contribute about 50,000 of that. There will be 80,000 people within about 4 kilometres of each other.
Wow.
Crowd at the Gabba, capacity crowd at the Gabba, capacity crowd at Suncorp. Don't try and catch a taxi anywhere near the centre of the CBD tomorrow night. But what a night it's going to be, because there's going to be the AFL matches on, going to have the NRL on as well, and of course it'll be broadcast across the nation. So big time as far as AFL NRL is concerned.
I wish I was supplying the pies that day. Make a few
bottles. 4 and 20 go down well. Mind you, though, in the corporate boxes these days, I think they still serve the 4 and 20, but you can also pick up the odd shrimp as well, and the odd little bit of crayfish and lobster as well these days.
Yeah, now he's still a bit of a Carlton supporter.
Oh, mate, and how about the Blues? Mate, I haven't heard a score for a few minutes, but, mate, the Blues, they're giving the Cats a something.
Well, lucky enough on IPL Radio, we broadcast nationally, so we can bring you up to speed. It's almost half-time, and Carlton, 6 goals, 8:44, are in front of the Cats, 4 goals, 6:30. Nick, one of our helpers here today, he's popped in. He's a Geelong man, but he was pretty smart. He thought that Geelong's backline was a bit depleted. They got a few out, and he actually was a bit concerned that Carlton might be too good. Their tall timber of Curnow and Mackay might be too good, and it looks like they're kicking a bag down there.
Well, look, the good thing about the Blues is that they've promised so much. with this season coming up, and and Silvani, etc., the third generations in the team
Yeah.
as well. All that sort of stuff, which has been building a lot of excitement around the Blues. And look, people have still got time to get on board. We're only into the second round. Anyone's welcome to get on board. But it's
Would
I
have,
think
been
the
a, would,
Blues.
have, would have been a bit of tension in the Titmus house last week with my sister Robin being Richmond and yourself being Carlton with the draw.
Oh, look, mate, I'll tell you what. I'll admit guilty. I actually tipped the Tigers because I thought they might have won last week. But what a disappointment, Faz. You can only pull a draw against what's one of the star sides for this season. So,
you like Vossi? Like the idea of Vossi being in charge of Carlton?
Vossi. Yeah, look, Vossi's one of the greats as far as AFL footy is concerned. Of course, played in 3 premierships in Brisbane, and one of the true greats. A good mate of mine's his manager.
Right.
So we do a bit of walking together, and we're only having a chat last week just about how well Vossi's going. So we're pretty happy to have Michael Voss, one of the true champions of AFL and of the Lions, in charge of the Blues this season.
Yeah. So, Steve, you've interviewed many people in your career. Give us the top 1 or 2 that really stand out in your sports reporting.
Obviously, other than us.
Apart from us.
Look, apart from you guys, look, I tell you what, it's one of the bucket list ticks to be on with the Faz man and SD, from Launceston and one from Georgetown.
Yeah.
Georgetown and Tassie. What more do you want?
Well,
I can get out all the Tassie jokes.
Well, didn't you play a bit of cricket with David Boone down there in
look,
Launceston years ago?
Mate, I did play with Boone. He could never keep up with him with the cans of beer. But to answer your question, SD and Faz, man, I can tell you that's a very easy question for me to answer. The greatest person I've ever interviewed of all time is Ayrton Senna.
Wow.
The Formula One racing car driver.
Wow.
Got to know Ayrton quite well. When I was working for Channel 7 in Adelaide in sport, I was the Grand Prix reporter. And one of the great thrills of that every year was to get a chance to mix with the Formula One drivers. And we used to have a bit of a dinner every year, and a few of the drivers would pop along to dinner, and I got to know Ayrton quite well. On one of those years, I sat next to this bloke, and I sort of sat there, and it was a Ford function.
Right.
And I was at the end of the table, and I sat next to this bloke. I didn't have a clue who he was. And I said, "What's your name, mate?" And he goes, "I'm Michael Schumacher." And I said, and what do you do? I said, "What do you drive?" He said, "I drive sports cars." I said, "Well, mate, you hope you might get into Formula One day, and we might get to know you." And he said, "Well, I'm hoping to do that in the next couple of seasons."
Well, he turned out right.
Well, he was driving for Ford at the time, and of course, Ford then sponsored the Benetton racing team, and Flavio Briatore was running that team at the time. And of course, Schumacher went to drive with that team a couple of years later, and the rest is history. But getting back to Ayrton, look, he was an extremely complex human being.
Right.
And, he risked his life even after he'd earned enough money that he could ever spend in his life. But he was, without a doubt, I still believe the greatest Formula One driver of all time. Back in those early days of the 90s, him through the streets of Monaco in the cars back then where they had manual gearboxes, it was just absolutely spectacular. And Senna was one of the true great drivers of all time. We had to heel toe to change gears, and look, and to meet the man and to get to know him a little bit was one of my great thrills of my journalism career. And when he died in that crash at Imola, it was enormously disappointing to think that a man who could not only drive but was so complex as a human being, and was able to be able to show what you could do with a person of such extraordinary intellect and drive a car with such speed and be able to tune into a motor car and drive it as one was really quite extraordinary. And that was one of the great thrills of my life to be able to interview Ayrton Senna. And look, there was Nigel Mansell back in those days as well, to be able to interview him. And look, one of the great things of my reporting career was the birth of the Adelaide Crows in Adelaide when there were whispers around with reporters that there was going to be a team in the AFL, and everyone back then thought it was going to be Port Adelaide. That was all going to be the go. Port Adelaide was the team that was going to get the licence, but then the SANFL stepped in and sort of said, well, we can't have that going on. We can't have a one football club owning an AFL licence in South Australia. We've got to have the SANFL as being the overarching body, is controlling whoever's going to be the team in the AFL. So that's how the Crows sort of got born and, if you like, stepped over the top of Port Adelaide. But they were one of the great thrills back then. It was extraordinary to be at that first match when I think they played Hawthorn, and the Crows won by 72 points, I think it was, at the end. And what a thrill it was to be at that first match when the Crows played in an AFL side. And then, of course, after that, we then went on and we got Fremantle became involved in the AFL as well, to get two teams in Perth. And the real expansion of the AFL expanded greatly around the country, getting up, two sides with the West Coast Eagles and Fremantle in Perth. And then, a Port Adelaide side in Adelaide, and now the Suns in southeast Queensland and the Lions as well. And I think the AFL has been a competition that you've only got to look at the crowd attendances that come every week and how many people attend training sessions. Yeah. Richmond, mate, they get more of the training sessions for Richmond at Punt Road in Melbourne than the NRL get to the grand final.
Yeah.
So,
that's how
big
they're
it
pretty
is.
passionate down there at Punt Road, and they have a few frothies at the London Hotel or the Royal across the road before they pop in, and it's a big day down there at Punt Road.
The old saying is, Paz, Richmond, there's always, everyone's got their full teeth. Of course, the old gag is, if the toothbrush was obviously invented in Collingwood, because if it wasn't, it'd be known as a teeth brush.
Steve, you've had a lot of your life has been a reporter and newsreader, but you've also been a parent of an Olympian. Ariane Titmus is your daughter and my niece, and she's had a great career in the last 6 years since she moved. When did she move up to Brisbane from Tasmania? And her career has obviously gone from strength to strength, and now she's a world champion, Olympic champion, and it must be extremely touching for you to be a parent that's so proud, and the sacrifices that you and my sister Robin and all the family moving up there. But tell us what it's like being a parent, flying around and supporting from poolside Ariane lately.
Oh, look, Tasman, it's been one of the great thrills of life. We're part of what's 0.00000 of 1% of the population that gets the opportunity to have a child go and compete at the Olympic Games, let alone win a couple of gold medals. It's been an extraordinary thrill, and I think every day we still pinch ourselves to think that we've been on this, been able to follow Ariane's career around the world and be able to support her. But look, I think the message, really to parents out there, and which we try to tell lots of parents, is that, when you have children, whether they're Olympic champions or not, or whether they play sport or whatever they do in their life, is that you as a parent, you have a responsibility to be able to provide to your children whatever it is that you can to the best of your ability. And that's really, I think, the message that we've got out there to all parents is, love your children to bits, whatever the situation is for them, and just be there for them. One of the things that we have in our household is that we don't talk about swimming a lot.
Yep.
Arnie comes home from training and, we say, how was training? And she says, great or bad or whatever. But we let her do all the talking. We're there to literally provide a shelter over her roof. We're there to provide a safe and loving environment that's not full of all, hoopla and how great everything is. It's really to just be a parent.
Yeah.
And I think our message is, when you have children, you're there to be a parent. Not to, you're obviously their number one fan as well, but at the same time, you're not there to cheer the cheer squad. You're there to provide the massive support, and it's been great thrills for all of us, Tasman, and to be able to have a daughter and a niece in your case be able to to be one of the best in the world, which has been just such an extraordinary thrill, and for her, we've just been delighted.
You do know that I was pretty good across the pool when I was in
Well,
school.
we understood. Well, man, we did. We do know that it's St Pat's College back in Launceston. I think at one stage there, for about 4/10 of a second until they ran the 19th heat of the Cross the River, that in the 18th heat, in fact, you did set the record there for Cross the Pool at one stage.
That's interesting because what we called the late for school race, where you had to run across the pool, put on a T-shirt and run back again.
Is that right?
And I champion every year in that race.
Yeah. Well, Steve,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you win. It doesn't matter what you win in life.
Yeah.
You know, if you have one victory that you can hang your hat on, that is what's most important.
That's it. And talking of some controversy and some topics at the moment that are quite current, I know you've been looking right into this a bit. Concussions and injuries are topical, and there's a lot that the AFL are a bit concerned about, and there's a bit of an investigation. Some of these past players are, they're having injuries and ramifications and issues later on in life. But you want to talk a little bit about the idea, the fact that not a lot of the women's injuries are talked about, and there's a bit more risk there, isn't there?
Yeah. Look, I've been reading obviously a lot about. Now, I'm not a doctor of any way, shape, or form, and I've been reading a lot, and I was thinking the other day, what made the AFL and NRL as great games and the best games on the planet is that we all look back and remember the days of Dermot Brereton, Lee Matthews.
Oh yeah.
These types of players who were just played the game in an extraordinarily rough manner.
Oh.
And I think it's admirable these days that we are now taking great care and notice of concussions in contact sports and the long-term injuries of those. Here in Queensland we had one of the true great gentlemen of rugby league in Paul Green, who was a great player and then went on to be a Cowboys coach. And unfortunately, Paul took his own life, and it was discovered later on that he had one of the brain injuries from being knocked around. And that particular incident had an enormous impact on the community. And I think from that day on, it's really got me thinking about, the path we're going down at the moment is extremely and probably the most important path in the history of contact sport, because one, it could change contact sport forever. But the thing that I notice is that while we're at the moment focusing in a lot on what's happening in AFL and NRL and bringing in big suspensions for high tackles, etc., is I look and watch NRLW and AFLW matches, and even though there's not the massive big clashes of impact that comes in the male form of the sport, I sort of have a bit of me says, it's a bit of a worry to see, women colliding and from a woman's perspective colliding fairly heavily together. And, I'm just hoping that in 10 years' time down the track that we don't all of a sudden start to hear about injuries that we should have known about 10 years previously. And I know there's some studies, I think, about to be undertaken into contact and women's sport. And one of the things I heard yesterday was that women tend to be ones that don't report if they're sore or injuries that they may be having around their upper regions as much as perhaps they should be doing. So, if I don't know about, you're a woman and you follow your sport greatly, whether you've got some views on that.
Yeah, I think women in general tend to, I hate to play the female card, but we do tend to experience a lot of discomfort and pain just for being females. We have our periods and we do take a few knocks and, our kids bash into us and all those things. So I think, and we do actually have, scientifically a higher pain threshold as well. Yep. So I think naturally, I think we're used to a little bit of pain and it to hanging around. So I definitely can understand that perspective or the idea that we don't report as much, because I think we tend to be quite cautious. I remember having I had a blood clot in my lung, right. And I could barely breathe and things. And I look back now and go, well, how? I was lucky to make it through, which was great. But
good to have you still here, Esther.
But it's amazing. It's amazing what you put up with. Like I knew that there was something seriously wrong, but it's amazing. But interestingly, there has been a study out in Harvard in the USA, and they're looking at the female structure. And we know that males and females are different, but I think one of the key things, especially when it comes to concussion, is you've got to realise we can't build the same strength around the head and the neck. So we don't actually have the capability to be as muscular. So therefore, when we do take a knock, our body isn't as protected by our muscles, because and we've got a higher percentage of body fat. So we're already, a little bit on the back foot. So this research suggests that even though we may not be at any higher risk of having injury, that when we do experience injury, then that injury is generally more severe just because of our makeup. And then you look at things like, I know ACL is a big problem with the AFL Women's League.
It's hard for the women to come back from that injury, aren't they?
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Because our stance, if you ever look at a male athlete and a female athlete when they change direction, our foot movements are actually different. Yeah. And our hips sit wider apart. And so the way just that generally we're structured, to be honest, doesn't go to our advantage. Yeah. So there is actually
I think too, we're not talking about stopping women playing AFL or NRL either.
No, not at all.
I think we're just sort of got to the point where we're just raising the discussion in relation to that we just need to keep an eye.
Yeah, I think
on all this.
Absolutely. I think it's about awareness, isn't it? I mean, if you know you're going in to drive a car, a fast car, you know that you've got some risks there. Yeah. And I think it's just important just to know the risks of potential injuries and what that could mean for your future.
And you look at, just here at IPL, we support people with mental health struggles, and they might have had a trauma, or they might have had an accident. They might have had a great career at something, and then all of a sudden they've had an accident or an injury, and their career's over. And you just worry, some of the women might find that it's a bit harder to get back through the fact that they can't get back through injuries, say, in 12 months, like a lot of the men in these professional sports, and especially if they're mothers and they're raising kids, and so the mental health side of it too. Because, we're here at IPL, we have people that have had some issues, and we help them, they're volunteers, and whether they've had some depression or anxiety or whatever. And so that's important in society, isn't it?
Tasman, you're exactly right, because, you take, we've got young women out there who have played with their brothers in the backyard and played footy, and then now all of a sudden we've got women's competitions, which is just fantastic. And then their dream is to play AFLW football. So they get this great opportunity, and then they get an injury. And we know from a man's point of view is that there are cases of where to come back from injury, there's been massive mental case issues. And you're right, our concern also exists, if women get to the point where they get a major injury and they can't fulfil their dream to continue to play AFLW football, where does that leave them in the mental space? Yet another area that I think we need to, the AFL and the NRL need to be able to really look at not just what's happening in the men's game, but have a very close look at what's happening in the women's game across the board, from what are the long-term effects with injuries. Where does that leave them mentally in relationship to the long term? And once their playing careers are over, where does it leave them if they got long-term injuries or not? How does that affect their situation with raising children and all those sorts of things? So, look, I think it's great that it's now being discussed nationally around the board, and a lot of money's being put in. A lot of people are getting on board. And look, where it's going to land, I think that's the big $64,000 question now. Are the games going to change dramatically in the rules, in the structure of how it's played, or not? We have to wait and see.
Yeah, Steve, as you know, IPL Radio broadcast nationally, and we can bring you the AFL score update here. It's Carlton 6 goals, 9-45, leading the Cats by 9 points. They're 5 goals, 6-36, and that's into the third quarter, early into the third quarter. But there you go, IPL broadcasting live, bringing you the update. Do you like that?
Look, mate, that is very, very impressive. Nothing that I wouldn't have thought you wouldn't have been able to do, though, Catman. But look, I'm a bit nervous, though, because the Cats are coming back. Mate, Hawkins, mate, have we seen much of Hawkins? Or is there always a risk
Look,
for any side playing
let's
against
see if we can have a
Geelong?
look at the stats here. I've been
So,
pretty
the
focused
Hawks,
on.
a real risk.
I've been pretty focused on your interview here, Steve. So,
Look, that's okay. Look, look, SD and I will just keep chatting away about this whole issue while you bury yourself into the stats.
Oh, look, he's been a bit quiet. He hasn't kicked a goal. He's kicked 1 point. So he's a bit ginger, though, isn't he? He's been coming off a bit of an injury in the pre-season, so he's probably not fully fit. He'd be still probably holding his own and creating a bit of a decoy maybe for Cameron, would you think?
Oh, mate, already they'll be playing him easy, mate, preparing for the finals already in round 2.
Gee, Nick, who's sitting next to me, he's a Geelong man, and he walked in, pretty confident. In fact, he was walking around this afternoon with a cup in his hand, and we were saying, "What's he doing with the cup?" And we thought, he's getting a bit cocky about the premiership, but then we realised it was just a coffee cup.
Well, there you go. Look. At the end of the day, you've got to show your colours. Stick by your team. The thing that always annoys me about people, though, who swap clubs halfway through the season, and they go,
"Shame on them."
Shame on them.
Yeah.
Shame on them.
Yeah. No, always been a Tiger myself, and you've been cutting. You had a little bit of an alliance there with Adelaide for a bit, which is understandable while you were living there.
Look, mate. It's a case of when in Rome. I think is what you've got to do. So. And tomorrow night I'll certainly go for the Lions. Tomorrow night against the D's. But that's going to be a cracker of a game. I think Fremantle also are going to be playing over here at some stage later in the season, which, mate, and the West Coast Eagles as well. So,
yeah, we're talking to the Dockers.
Looking forward to that.
Talking to the Dockers, Alex Pearce, I think he's from Burnie. He's now their new skipper.
Well, there you go, mate. They say all the good...
Another good Tassie person.
Oh, Paz, look, that's a whole separate issue for us to talk about another occasion, whether Tasmania should have a team in the AFL. Like we could talk for 4 hours about that.
Certainly could.
Well, Steve, I know you're a busy man, but at some stage during the AFL season, maybe you could pop back on to IPL radio and.
Absolutely.
When it's coming closer to the announcement, you could maybe give your little ideas on that.
Look, absolutely. And look, I think it's been a pleasure to have a chat to you guys. And I'd like to congratulate you both too, SD and Faz, man, for getting the radio show up and running because, it's very important that we have community radio stations around the country operating. I know from my experience, I've done a bit of work with community radio around the country and particularly back in Tasmania as well. And look, I think it's extremely important that community radio is out there because it gives people in communities a chance to have a voice in their communities. And you guys are doing a great job. The mental health space that you're providing is you're giving people a chance to chase their dreams and to do things that they maybe not have been able to do. But through the radio station they're able to be able to do things that they perhaps wouldn't have been able to do. So I think to everybody there at the station, congratulations, well done. And I just want to urge anybody out there, some advertisers and some supporters in the area, get on board, guys. These guys are doing a terrific job. And if you've got a few bucks out there that you want to, throw in to enable the station to be able to continue on, throw it in, get on board, support the station because community radio at the end of the day can drive so many really good issues in the community and get some fabulous outcomes.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Steve.
Yeah, good on you, Steve.
Very good segue because I'm actually wearing a cap and it says Chasing Dreams. So I don't know if you can see me with a zoom or a hidden camera in here, but I've got a little cap on with Chasing Dreams on it, and IPL stands for Inspiring Passionate Lives. So there you go. That's
what we're all about.
What we're all about, and thanks.
And good on you. Congratulations.
Thanks very
fantastic.
much.
Thank you. Well, I know you're busy. Thanks very much for taking our call and having a great chat to us. I'm sure the listeners out there really enjoyed that. Covered quite a bit there, SD, and
absolutely, and enjoy the game.
Yeah, enjoy the game. Have a good
we'll
time.
Enjoy the game. Hopefully the roast chooks served up on the table by the time I go inside.
Yeah, I'm sure
I'll have to do the cleaning up.
I'm sure the Channel 7 Gold Coast and Channel 7 Brisbane will look after you with a nice little sort of cup of coffee or a nice little champagne or a little bit of the prawn or the roast chicken, as you say.
Oh, mate, it's looking good. And look, to everybody over there in Perth, all the best for 2023. And you know, for your local sides over there, everybody playing in the local leagues as well as the AFL, and also all people playing in all sports and in all competitions. Don't forget everybody out there, youngsters in particular, chase your dreams, because you never know. They may come true.
Yeah, that's right. And earlier in the show, you were probably busy on the news, reading the news in Gold Coast, but we had a gentleman that came in and he's just starting up a new facility for futsal in the local area. And so he's trying to get on board a lot of teams, and other sports can also, operate out of it. Yeah, so they can, you can have badminton, or you can have netball or whatever in his facility, which is fantastic. So we're going to get behind them and support them.
We certainly are.
Down in Port Kennedy. Yep. And so a bit of community. We're going to support the Rockingham Flames in the basketball, and we're going to pop down to the launch of the Rockingham Rams, which are like the local amateur footy team down here. So we're definitely getting involved with the community. So thanks for your time, Steve. And I know, SD, you've enjoyed this.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Steve. It's been great to have you on the show.
Yeah, good on you guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
And pass our regards on to Ariane for any future competition she's got up. I know she's always got a busy schedule. Where's she been lately? Over in Thailand or Asia?
Yeah, training in Thailand. We've got the World Championships in Fukuoka in Japan coming up in August. And then, of course, the big one is next year when we go to Paris for the Olympic Games.
Yeah. A bit of frog's legs.
I don't know about that.
No
All right,
worries,
guys.
Steve.
Thanks
You
very
guys
much.
look after each other and take care.
You
Good
too.
stuff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well, Fazman, fantastic.
He's had a pretty good career, Steve. He can... Ayrton Senna, eh? Imagine having Ayrton Senna when he was alive and performing, sitting in the IPL radio studio. Well, Steve, he's got plenty of stories, and I'm sure later on in the year we'll be able to get a couple more from him.
But I love to just hear his passion. You could hear it in his voice at the end about the importance of local sport and people getting involved. And it's not even a case of just getting involved as a participant of sport. It's the man who does the barbecue for the kids. It's the one who runs out the water
Works
bottles.
On the gate.
Works absolutely. Paints the lines.
Organises the parking around the oval like they used to in the
Sells
local
the
footy.
raffle tickets down at the old Coles.
Makes the banners.
Ooh, big job.
You know, when one of the 45 plus footballers is still playing with the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and he's reached 300 games after probably 2 knees and
That's right.
torn 4 hamstrings, but he's still got to his 200 games, and he runs through a banner. And, because he's reached that milestone, and the whole club get behind, and they do the fundraising, and they really get a part of it. And I know Nick, he's not with us now, he's popped off, but he gets behind the Rockingham Rams, and I'm pretty sure he's a member, and he loves it. He reckons it's a great club, and we're going to go down there for the launch.
Yeah, very much so.
And get a part of it. And I'm really interested to see how they go this year.
Well, absolutely. And I think, it's going to be a good season for them. My gut tells me that that they're going to do well, and I'm looking forward to following their progress.
Well, now that IPL Radio are going to be giving them a bit of a rev up each week.
They're non-stop, eh?
Yeah. We'll get a couple of them in a couple of weeks. I believe the president and a couple of others from the Rockingham Rams are going to pop in, I think the 13th, Thursday the 13th of April. So put that in your calendar, listeners. Do listening to that if you're a local Rockingham follower of the Rams.
But wrapping up for today, because we are pretty much out of time. Paul's platters is coming up next, and we can't keep Paul waiting.
No.
His platters will go cold. You can't have that.
No.
So, what a great show, though.
It was a great show. We had a little bit of a technical issue there at one stage. So apologies for if one of our little chats with Martin about the cricket, that was a little bit out of our control. There was a couple of gremlins popped in here to the technical area. I think maybe one of the cords might have been out, unfortunately.
A bit loosey-goosey, something like that.
We might have to invest in another technical staff member to help in our area. But anyway, moving on. We had a great show. Thanks very much,
Thank
SD.
you. And coming up next week, we'll, of course, be looking at the next next round of the AFL.
Yeah, and we've got a great interview.
Oh, my word, we
Great
do.
interview, really interesting interview this will be. A lady by the name of Jean Moyle, and she's a sports psychologist.
Very interesting role.
Yeah.
And I think it'll really play into what we're all about here, which is about mental health and the human psyche. So
Yeah.
I'm really, really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, and whether it's a young child that's been bullied at school or whatever, or whether they're just out of form, and sometimes, they've had 2 or 3 bad games, and then what gets them back up, and them believing in themselves and having support of people, or, just trying to just improve, or there's so much involved, and I'd love to chat to her. She's been a sports psychologist for many years in Brisbane, so another Queenslander. We've got a few contacts around the country.
We do, around
we might have to chop in and see in my little black book where there's a few in Adelaide. Anyway.
We're going to have Simon back.
Oh, Simon
having
back.
done his New Zealand tour. He's going to come back and give us some update on what he thought of the rugby over there and watching a few matches in the South Island. So it'll be good to have a chat with him and get an update on that. And of course, coming up as well, we're going to start seeing the women's rugby kick off for the year, which is going to be really exciting.
Love that.
I can't promise that I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be calm. I'm going to be very excited over that one.
Do you reckon you could take me under your wing and get me to
fired up?
Yeah, well, I'm happy.
Absolutely.
I'm even. I'm here to support the women and the men.
If the World Cup was anything to go by, we're in for an absolute smashing competition.
Yeah.
So everyone, that's our show.
Yeah.
Fazman, thank you.
Oh, thank you, SD.
Thanks everyone for listening. You've been listening to Talkin' Sport with IPL Radio, and we'll be back next week from 3 p.m. on Thursday. So we hope to see you then.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.